first animation technique that I used was stop motion animation, and it's super easy after you get over the hurdle of its animation. I didn't think it was going to be as easy as it was.
So I actually made my film Tinker at home in my basement, and the primary thing I found necessary in making stop motion is to have a sturdy camera. So no matter if you have a tripod or not, you want to make sure that the camera is stationary and that it won't wiggle around while you're working, or else you'll get jolts and movement when you put all your images together.
You take an inanimate object and you put it down or wherever you want it to be, and you move it one bit, and then you take a picture, and then you move it again and you take a picture.
If you want it to look really smooth, make sure you move the figures at small increments at a time. Make sure that you're moving them consistently, or else they're going to look really jolty as well. Storyboard the shots you want to get so that you know what you want to do before you turn the camera on, because it takes a really long time to execute each shot, and you don't want to realize halfway through filming that you should have done this one thing, or you wish you did something else instead, because it's going to take a lot of time.
And by the time you get into the editing process, it's this really cool outcome for something that was pretty easy to do.
If you want the character to stop at a certain point, it might be helpful to take multiple photos of them stopped and maybe move them ever so slightly just so that it looks more natural having them stand rather than just extending the same photo. It's going to look like a weird freeze frame.
Animation I usually break up into 3 categories. There's cell animation, stop motion animation, and computerized animation. So cell animation is the really old animations like Snow White or old Mickey Mouse cartoons. So that's done like a flip book. It's every frame is on a piece of paper or a cell, and then they take a picture of that and it moves. So it's very 2D. You could use things like paint, markers, pencils, different pieces of paper. That's really cool.
Try to make sure that everything you put on the screen and in your story is accomplishable at home with what you have. I wanted the last shot of Tinker to be all of the figurines attacking their creator, but I realized that in practice, having a person lay on the ground and stop motion making these little figurines climb up her would be incredibly difficult. But I really dislike the end of the film because I wasn't able to show what the ending actually is, which is them attacking her. I just hinted at it. If I could go back, I would make sure that the ending was something that I could have easily animated because I didn't have the time to do the shot that I wanted.
Advanced animations are like Pixar and Disney movies, like Up and Moana and Brave and Toy Story. Those are all animations that are computerized. So basically, in the simplest format, it's they make a character on a computer and then they say, I want this character to move its arm, I want this person to go to here, and I want this action to repeat itself. I mean, it's a lot simpler than doing it on paper, but it is hard to learn at first.
Hi everybody, my name is John General and I'm one of Mr. Coy's former students, and I directed the short film Painted Love. How I created the VFX for it was by having 2 actors act out in front of a green screen, and then what I did was key them out and then turn them into silhouettes using After Effects. I used overlay effects to kind of bring out some of that texture in the brick wall and add that to the silhouettes to make them blend a little bit better, to make them look like they were painted on by the graffiti artist. Hope you enjoyed it.
My name is Morgan Barth, and Mr. Corey asked me today to talk to you guys about my 2 experimental films, Contingency and Transcended. So Contingency was a ride. It was so difficult to get everybody together. I remember the end of my junior year, it was a really hard time, and Mr. Corey showed us this short film called Meshes of the Afternoon, and I felt very attached to that very fast, and I was like, wait, how can I express that same emotion? The most important thing that I think came from Contingency was learning my editing style. I started using colors, different cuts, and then that leads me into Transcended. The hardest part about filming Transcended was making sure that the match cuts were as clean as they could be. I was about 75% immersed into Adobe, and I practically sat there hours on end trying to figure out, all right, how can I make this match cut look cool? How can I use this jump cut successfully? How can I use color to portray emotion? It was just this whole toboggle in my brain trying to figure out experimental film.
Hi, my name is Sean Cudahy. I'm currently a senior at Emerson College, in my last semester studying media arts production. An experimental film, at the end of the day, should really look at questions and situations that people would never normally be in and see how people would react to them. It doesn't necessarily have to always make a ton of sense. It doesn't always necessarily have to be a cohesive story. It just has to show what people will do in situations that could never happen to them.
I'd say experimental film is kind of taking the idea and almost going beyond the genre, like a cut and dry genre, like horror action. It doesn't have to make logical sense or even follow a chronological timeline, kind of like what Tarantino does in Pulp Fiction with non-linear storylines. But it can follow like a narrative if you want it to. For experimental, it doesn't always have to involve a meticulous shot. It can be more in the moment, kind of just like whatever you think of at that time. Make it, experimental.
So experimental films, in my opinion, are something that make you feel a visceral or emotional reaction to them. They're not just a bunch of random pictures or clips. It should have a theme throughout them that makes an audience feel an emotion. And you should go into filming it with an idea of what that emotion should or could be. So it could be as simple as, doing a time lapse, filming a time lapse of a plant growing and dying, and then another plant growing out of its decay. And then in between everything, you put in pictures and clips of old and young people. And some people might see that as death and decay, while others might see it as life and rebirth.